Let's not beat around the bush. Singles Flirt Up Your Life is basically a copy of The Sims, in which the goal isn't just to manage the mundane aspects of the characters' lives. You're trying to get them to knock boots, as it were. You're trying to build up two characters' relationship to a point where they can hop into bed with each other and have sex. So that's an interesting concept. It's one that wouldn't have made it to these shores unless publisher IDOS decided to make a downloadable, adults-only rated version available in North America. This game actually looks pretty impressive, especially in still screenshots, and it plays a lot like The Sims, but it's also missing a lot of the content that makes The Sims interesting, so it's a pretty shallow game. And the truth is, Singles also isn't nearly as racy as it sounds, which is kind of its biggest failure. It's not that there's anything wrong with this concept, it's just that Singles doesn't really deliver on its promises and doesn't seem to accurately present a kind of blossoming relationship between two characters, which really is what it's trying to convey. This is a fairly conservative game, you'll be surprised to know. It's really about taking these kind of baby steps in a fledgling relationship and eventually getting the two characters to, take that next big step. The main difference in gameplay terms between Singles and The Sims is that in Singles, you're always controlling two characters directly. That's the only thing that keeps you basically from getting completely bored playing this game. With two characters to manage, there is enough stuff for you to do from moment to moment. One wants to wash its hands and the other one needs to use the bathroom or needs to eat or something like that. You are, as in The Sims, spending a lot more time managing the mundane aspects of the characters' lives, and in fact, they come off as rather obsessive-compulsive. As you're keeping these characters relatively satisfied in their bodily functions and so forth, you're also trying to spend a lot of time getting them to flirt with each other and getting them to sweet-talk each other. The game, very strangely, has kind of an independent set of options for romance and an independent set of options for sensuality, as though those things have no relation to each other. Singles has very little content to it. If you were to start playing with all the different kind of social animations unlocked at the beginning, you'd see everything the game has to show you in about half an hour or so. Instead, you kind of unlock the additional content over the space of maybe a weekend, maybe 10 hours of play, if that. It's a very easy game. There really isn't much challenge to it, and the goal, again, is just to kind of see what new animations become unlocked and see them for the first time, but they're all the same every time, regardless of which of the characters you're playing as. And once you've seen it all, once you've gotten a relationship to its maximum point, then there's really no reason to go back and replay the game as some of the other characters. It's not necessarily a bad thing about Singles, but the game is basically utter nonsense. The way in which the relationships progress in the game makes no logical sense at all. So one of the first options that you can unlock is for the characters to French kiss. So this is sort of this, deeply passionate ritual between two people, and yet simple things like kind of innocent hugs and pecks on the cheek, those come later. So, and meanwhile, you're getting this very strange dialogue that is completely incongruous with what's actually happening between the two characters. So the relationships don't make any sense at all. These are these characters that are presented as being kind of swingers in their 20s or something, but they'll never leave their house except to work. They can call their friends on the phone, but they can't have company over. They never go out. They're very reluctant to actually get into an intense physical relationship. If the goal of Singles was titillation, it doesn't even really succeed that well at that level. Again, there's only really one specific animation for any of the actions, and the actions themselves are limited. So when you get the characters finally to a point where they're kind of making out or something, none of it is even very racy. There is, in fact, full frontal nudity in this game. You can command the characters to disrobe at any time, hence the adults-only rating. But if you were to take that out, if they just kind of had their underwear on or something, this game wouldn't have any content in it that you wouldn't see in, like an R-rated movie. Surprisingly enough, the game seems to have these kind of conservative values to it. There's no smoking, for instance. There's no alcohol referenced or included at any point in the game. So these sorts of things, again, don't seem to mesh well with the underlying concept of this game. With all that said, Singles really isn't bad. It basically plays well. It is pretty much fun to see this stuff happen for the first time. The game has an unusual concept. it's not very good. It won't last you a long time. You could certainly do worse, and if you're curious about the game, it's worth checking out.